Hey guys, welcome back to Call Me Not Call Me, my YouTube channel dedicated to the Wheel of Time. I am so happy that you came back for another video. I hope that you like this one. First, before we get started, can you please go and subscribe to my channel so you can know when I drop new videos and come on by again. Always love to have company. Let me also start off by saying spoilers. This is going to be a spoiler-filled video. I'm basically going to be going over everything from The Great Hunt all the way through A Memory of Light concerning Matt. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and jump right into my topic for today, which is my favorite character. Who, you may ask? That is, of course, Lord Matrim Cauthon, or just Matt as he likes to be called, and definitely don't call him a lord. He's no bloody lord. So I remember my friend who gave me the book series, he basically told me that Matt will be my favorite character, and when I first started reading the books, I couldn't think of why Matt would ever be my favorite character. But as I read more and got all the way to the end, I was like, yeah, Matt's my favorite character. I have the most fun listening to his chapters and his point of view chapters. So Matt just basically became like the anti-hero, or actually not even an anti-hero. He's just a hero. But he doesn't like to be called a hero. I guess there are other characters in, like, literature and mythology that are similar to him, basically, and the things that happen to him. I'm not too learned on that. So, but at the same time, he's just a great character as far as just his humor and the things that happen to him. And he just basically became a tried and true character that I could literally listen to all the books and just skip ahead to all of his points or his parts in the books and be fully entertained. So what I'm going to do today is go over all of my favorite Matt moments from the books. I didn't rank them, but I decided the best way to do this video would be to just list them all, at least list some that I basically come up with that are actually great parts. I mean, he has so many great parts. It would be like a 20 to 50, point list if I was to name everything that I enjoy, that I've read that Matt did. But I decided to just basically curb it down to about 17, and group them with, when they happened. So I'm going to start from my first favorite Matt moment, which is Matt blowing the dagger. So Matt, Perrin, and Rand are all in Falma, and they're trying to basically find the ruby-hilted dagger and the horn of Valir that was stolen. And they realize that Egwene has been kidnapped and somehow she's in Falma. They don't know that Nynaeve, Min, and Elaine are also there. And all they know is that they're in the middle of what is about to become a big battle between the White Cloaks and the Seanchan army. And so with nothing else to lose, Matt basically just decides, hey, they said the horn was supposed to be at the last battle. They didn't say it couldn't be blown before then, and just basically, right? And he's like, right. And they don't say anything, so he says, and blows the horn. And so it basically helps them to survive being right in the middle of two advancing armies, and helps Egwene and Elaine and Min and Nynaeve basically escape peril that they were in at the time, being basically cornered by the Seanchan army also. So that basically, I guess, puts the Seanchan army in a little bit of disarray and helps them to all escape that situation. Next in the grouping of Matt's early exploits would be basically Matt besting Gawain and Galad. So Matt basically is in the White Tower after being healed from the ruby-hilted dagger, and he wants to escape, and realizes that he only has a couple of coppers in his pockets, and realizes that if he's to escape, he needs more money. So between that Egwene and Elaine basically coming to him and asking him to deliver a letter to her mother, Morghese, in Cairhien. Mat decides to go out just to see if he could actually even get off the island after the Omelency told him that you won't be able to get off the island. He goes to go check it out, of course, because he's smart. And basically he sees Gawain and Galad practicing in the White Tower's warders practice yard and decides to pick up a quarterstaff. Quarterstaff basically is a long staff, I guess about wrist thick, that you could basically use as a weapon if you wanted to. Sidebar, two things. I like the fact that Perrin and Rand and Mat always think of weapons and things that basically can be used to kill or used to just, protect themselves. I love that. You basically deal with that a little bit with Perrin and his axe and the hammer and his conflict about that. And I always found it interesting that Mat's first weapon was basically the quarterstaff, which you can use to basically protect yourself or you can use to kill if you are skilled enough. So Galad and Gawain both see Mat basically, just taking his ease, and come up and introduce themselves and want to know some information about Rand and Elaine. So he decides to challenge Galad and Gawain to a match. Their practice swords against him and his quarterstaff. And so they were just like, I ain't gonna beat you up. I don't want Egwene to get mad at me. So, but Mat is like, okay, I'm trying to bet you some money, and I believe that I could beat you guys. And so the head warder that's training, basically Hamar, he comes over and is just like, take the bet. If they don't want to pay you, I'll pay you. I believe, I want to see this match. And so Mat, even though he is weak from the healing, he decides to say, hey, let me go for it, and ends up beating Gawain and Galad. And Gawain and Galad, just mind you, end up both being blade masters. So they're pretty good already. And Mat with a quarterstaff has beaten them. Hamar says that who is the greatest swordsman of all time, and all the warders in training basically say Jerome Gaidin. And he said the one time out of the thousands of matches that he's ever lost was to a farmer with a quarterstaff, which exactly is what Mat is. So that was a great scene, a great part, and I can't wait to see that in the TV show. So now that Mat has some extra money, the next great scene that comes is basically his escape. Now, the second sidebar that I was going to bring up was the fact that this is the first time you're really actually hearing Mat from his own mind and lips. And you get a different type of viewpoint on him. And I always feel that does him a disservice, the fact that we don't really get to know Mat until the third one, and that's the one where people basically really start to like him. I always felt that then it makes me feel that he was always a likable character. It was just the circumstances and what his friends were going through and how they were viewing Mat at the time. So I kind of feel that was unfair to Mat as a character. But this scene is basically when his true power, I guess, really starts to come about, because he takes his winnings into the town, packs up all his stuff. People see him and figure, oh, you're gonna try to escape, but you won't be able to get far. And he says, you can't blame me. So he goes out and decides to stop at an inn where they're gambling. He decides to throw his money in, and he wins. And then he wins again. And then he wins again. And again. Another one. And next thing you know, he is at another inn with pockets full of gold and a couple of bags of gold and different coins and stuff like that. And he realizes, I'm rich. What is going on? It feels almost weird to him, like his whole body and, everything, it feels like he's in a fog. And he he realizes that, wow, I'm actually really lucky. And so that kind of manifests more as his Taverian power grows, basically, and affects him all the way throughout his whole entire story arc. So while he's there running around Tarvalin and, you know, getting more money, he ends up at an inn where he realizes that the person who is telling a story at the front of the inn is Tom Merrilin. Now, we haven't seen Tom Merrilin since the Great Hunt, and who knows what he was doing after he killed King Goldrian. So he shows up at this inn drunk as hell, and these two serving maids who basically look like sisters, they're all falling all over him. So Matt has so Tom has his pimp hat on pretty much all day long. They can't resist it. They can't get enough of the Kaliman. And so Matt basically, you know, orders 3 chickens on his own, and while he's there talking to Tom, who he got a glass of wine, next thing you know, he finishes all of the chicken, and Tom is like, "What did you do, boy? Hide them up your sleeve?" And that gets me every single time. So they end up basically escaping with a couple of thugs, dark friends, gray men on their heels, but they end up escaping and get to Cairhien. So I'm gonna jump ahead for my next one. A lot of cool things happen through the rest of the Dragon Reborn, but the next part that I'd say, you know, is relevant is basically when Matt saves Egwene, Nynaeve, and Elaine from the Stone of Tyr. He meets an Illuminator along the way. Him and Tom, they meet Eludra, and basically, she, in exchange for saving her life, gives Matt a bundle of fireworks, which makes Tom scared an awful bit. But while he's searching for them, he finds out that they've all been taken to the Stone of Tyr, and he gets a crazy, brilliant idea that he's gonna light all the fireworks at the same exact time and shove it into a crack in the stone, and ends up blowing a hole in the stone. And so him and a few hundred Aiel basically come through and save the day. So once again, Matt saves the day. He didn't even want to, but he is an honorable man. And it's funny because Swan Sanche tells him that he reminds her of her Uncle Juan, who never was really good for anything, but on days when they needed a hero, he was there. And he ended up dying in a house fire where he saved several people and children. So that's just Matt, and that virtue in him actually gets repeated by Egwene when she tells the story of basically how he saved a kid in the Waterwood. So that's just Matt. He's a reluctant hero, and we love him for it. My next part is Matt going through the 2 twisted doorframe ta'angreal. So Matt, they're still in Tyr. They're all, you know, taking up residence and, you know, just wondering what's going to happen next. He's getting agitated. The stone was actually attacked by Shadow Spawn, and he is just wondering what should he do next. And so Egwene somehow tells the last person she should have let know, Matt, about a twisted doorframe ta'angreal that's downstairs in the holding, and if you go through it, the person, whatever's on the other side, is supposed to tell you or answer 3 questions. Matt, of course, can't help himself. He basically decides to go through the ta'angreal. He didn't exactly promise her airtight contractual wording. He didn't completely promise her he wasn't going to go. He almost sounded like he was playing when he did it, but he goes through the door frame, and he gets transported to a whole another world with the Aelfin. Now, it's a world that basically is occupied by 2 beings, Aelfin and Ealfin, and the ones that he meets up with are the Aelfin, and they're the ones that basically answer 3 questions. And he doesn't know it. He's only supposed to, trying his best to word it the best, as best as he can, so that they can tell him what he thinks he needs to know. But they tell him other stuff that he doesn't even understand. Why does he even need to know this information? And so the things that they tell him is, you need to go to Roydion, and you're going to marry the daughter of the 9 moons, and you're going to give up half the light of the world to save the world. And he's just like, what the hell are you talking about? I asked this and you're telling me that. Come on. I need answers. And so they end up taking him and throwing him out of the doorframe to Angrial. He tries to go through, but you can only go through once. So he basically just walks straight through, almost knocks over a lamp. And so, funny enough, he finds out that Rand and Moiraine were both in there, and that's why the creatures were trying to get him out as soon as possible. So he's basically dealing with trying to figure out what those answers even mean, but figuring that with all the stuff that he's seen over the last 4 books or 3 books, you know what? There has to be something to this. So anyway, he goes to Roydion with Rand and Moiraine and Lan, and they all go to the Aiel Waste. And so he's in Roydion and finds another twisted doorframe. Of course he went through the doorframe. Of course he went back through the doorframe. He needs to have answers. And when he goes through this doorframe, he actually meets the Eilfin. The Eilfin don't answer questions. He doesn't know this, but they don't answer questions. But what they do is they grant you 3 wishes, pretty much. He is being belligerent like he was the first time, and doesn't exactly even know what he asked for. But he gets a fox head medallion. He gets an Ashandarai, which is a long kind of quarterstaff with a spear on the end, which is cool because he knows obviously how to use such a weapon. ... to be continued. And also he gets memories filled into his brain. One of the things he asks for is for the holes in his head to be filled, and he basically ends up unwittingly getting memories that they just basically randomly threw in his head. But always wondered about the whole random part, because I'm just saying that, are they random? Because how does he knows other things, but the people that he knows that he has memories from are people that are generals or were involved with battle. That's kind of lucky. So that's what he gets out of the 2 doorframe Angrial. And those are some of the coolest scenes, basically just meeting those new creatures and him getting these things that he still doesn't exactly know or understand, but at the same time, you're welcome. So my next Mat moment is Mat and Cairhien completely figuring out the battle plan and showing Rand and Mat that he knows a lot more about battles than he used to. So Mat basically is leaving the Aiel Waste with Rand. He finds out that the Shydell clan has basically left and are heading to Cairhien and are going to pillage and loot and murder as they do. And Mat is like, I don't want no parts of this, so I'm gonna leave. So he decides to go and tell Rand, that he's leaving, but he doesn't find Rand in his tent. He finds Osmodian and Lan, and basically they start talking about the battle plans as Mat is looking at the map, trying to figure out what's going on. And Mat pretty much just pulls up the entire battle plan if he was making the plans, basically, and it ends up being the same battle plan that Lan, an experienced general and leader in battle, and all of the Aiel clan chiefs basically have come up with. Mat, a 20-year-old guy, basically just pulls it out of thin air and explains exactly why. And so they're all just looking at him like, what? And so he leaves. He tells Rand, hey, I'm out, peace. He leaves, and Lan is like, he just came up with the entire plan. Like everything you decided to come up with and everybody came up with, he put out the whole entire thing. And so that basically puts a bug in Rand's ear that, hey, Matt has some abilities that I need to use to be able to succeed here. Then my next Matt moment is basically Matt forming the band and how this whole thing ends with Couladin basically being killed by Matt. So Matt's trying to leave. He basically is trying to sneak out the back way and runs into the Tyran and Cairhien forces that are basically left to, I guess, be reserves or something like that. And Matt is just like, I'm not going to leave these guys to die. But why? Because he's a hero. And decides to tell them that, hey, you guys got to wait right here. And if you do what I say, you're not going to die. And so basically they start listening to him, and he realizes that he actually needs to use them as soldiers if they're going to all live. And he decides to do that. They follow him again to Viren. People just want to follow you. People believe that you can save their lives. And so all of this is going on. He's basically running around fighting the battle along with the Aiel, and ends up out of nowhere attracting Couladin's attention. Couladin is the leader of the Shido, just so in case you guys didn't know this, and ends up battling him hand to hand, spear to spear, Ashandarai to spear, and wins, and ends up beheading Couladin. I'm not sure if he actually beheaded Couladin, but he beat him, and then they cut off his head. So that pretty much won Rand a battle again. It's becoming a theme almost. That's weird. Matt wins battles. Wow. He must not be the prankster that we thought he was. So my next Matt moment is Matt meeting Tuon. So he's in Abu Dar. Abu Dar, you say? How in the heck did he get to Abu Dar? He was just outside of Cairhien. All right, so Rand basically sent Matt to go get Elaine and bring her back to Cairhien, which Rand also now controls, so that she can be crowned queen, and he doesn't have to rule Cairhien any longer because he has a lot of things to basically juggle. Anyway, so he basically sends Matt to go and get Elaine and maybe Egwene, and throw Nynaeve in there if you feel like it, and bring them to Cairhien. So Matt basically has more so accepted his role as a Ta'veren, and probably in the last battle, and decides to do it. He goes to them, and they basically need to go to Abu Dar to go find the Bowl of the Winds, and ends up being left in Abu Dar after Elaine and Nynaeve leave to go to Cairhien. Lots of great things happen while they're there, but basically this part is when Matt is still in Abu Dar and finds out that the Shanshan have arrived, and a new High Lady has basically come to come to town. And he doesn't know this, but this part gets better with every reread, because now after you have the first reread through, you understand the context of the dice stops when he meets her, and he's just like wondering for a while, like, why did the dice even stop? I have no clue who the heck this little girl is, basically. But I always find it to be like a great reread section, basically, when Matt meets Tuon for the first time. Which leads me to my next favorite part, when Matt is planning on basically escaping Abu Dar. It's getting a little hot. He realizes that if he doesn't leave now, he's never going to be able to go, and decides to leave. Tuon sees him and is just like, I can't let you leave, Toy. And so she fights him hand to hand, even though he has a bum leg, basically. And he finds out, someone else comes in, finds out, and is like, oh my God, to put your hands on the daughter of the Nine Moons is death. And he's like, the daughter of the Nine Moons? And they're just like, yeah, that's who she is. And he says, she's my wife. She's my wife. Your bloody daughter of the Nine Moons is my bloody wife. And that is, at the very least, fortuitous. Which leads me to my next part, which is basically when she completes the whole entire ceremony. So he kidnaps her. They're out in the, in Gillidan, trying to basically get her to safety. And when that happens, she decides to complete the ceremony and says, he is my husband. He is my husband. Matrim Cauthon is my bloody husband. Somewhere along those lines is what she says. And basically completes the ceremony. And now he is the Prince of Ravens. This is a great part because basically, after all this time of him basically saying that he's no bloody lord and he's no bloody noble, he actually becomes a noble. He marries into the family. So this lines up something, a connection that basically is going to be so amazing down the line, because a faction that they need to win the last battle is the Seanchan. And even though many of the people in the Randland basically are against the Seanchan, to truly win, they must basically all come together. So this basically ties the Seanchan to Team Rand. My next great Mat moment is Mat killing the golem. What's a golem? Give me a second. When they were in Ebudar, this creature comes from nowhere. I think it's a golem that was set loose by Samael, but he basically is hunting Mat and Elaine, and Mat fights him and is able to chase him off basically with his fox head medallion that basically prevents the one power from touching him. For some reason, this material or whatever this Sangreal does basically burns him as though the metal were on fire. They escape. The golem kills Tylan and ends up killing Nilesian, and then they find themselves back in Cairhien, and the golem has basically chased them all the way there too. Mat ends up losing Lopin, his manservant, to the golem, and decides that they need to take care of this golem once and for all. So he devises a plan with Elaine, and the only way that they could figure to basically kill the golem, besides stuffing his throat full of foxhead medallions, which is one of Mat's thoughts, is to basically let the golem fall into eternity through one of the gateways. And so he basically pulls the golem into a trap and lures the golem off of a ledge into the void, and this endless void that they travel in when they are going through gateways, when they're skimming. Now, my next favorite part is my most favorite part, but I'm going to say it now because I'm just basically going in order. So, but it's when Mat saves Moiraine. It's amazing. So Tom basically tells Mat that he finds that the letter that was given to him by Mat from Rand is actually from Moiraine, and she basically tells them that she is alive and with the Elfin and Ilfin, and if Mat, Tom, and some other person comes to save her, they might all live and she'll be rescued. Mat basically is trying to fight it, thinking to himself that, yeah, that's going to be a death trap. I don't even know where to find them. I don't know how to get her out. But if there's anything that Mat always has to basically fall back on, it's his luck. It's helped him so far. He hasn't lost yet. So Noel, one of their companions during their ride through Ebudar and into Gillidan, basically decides to want to be their third, and from a sacrifice by Noel, Mat is able to save Moiraine. But the other thing that happens basically is that first he has to give his sacrifice, Mat. His sacrifice is giving up half the light of the world to save the world. And he realizes that what that is he's going to have to sacrifice an eye to save Moiraine. That's the trade-off. And he walks right up to the dealer and says, hit me. That's Mat. And he realizes that, you know what? I'm going to bet on me every time. You know who I trust? Me. That's who. That's who I trust. I trust me. And boom, gives up the eye. It hurts like the dickens. And they're able to actually escape because Noel sacrifices himself to blow up a bunch of the Eilfin and Elfin. And Mat, because he got the Ashandarai from the Eilfin, the Ashandarai is actually a key, basically, that's able to cut into the walls and allows them to escape. It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. So he gets out and he basically cusses at the tower like, hold my jock strap. Y'all can't do it. It's too heavy. So my next moment is going back to Mat and Tuon. This time they are back in Ebodar. After he releases Moraine, he basically is able to sneak back into the Tarasin palace to meet up with Tuon, and they consummate their marriage. She feels just fine. It's funny because he shows his vulnerability after all the women that he's been with. I mean, you know, he says that he's been with a lot of girls. I guess he's been with a lot of girls. He's kissed a lot of girls. So, but he still shows himself to be a little vulnerable, asking her if she loved him. And she was just like, I could grow to love you, but I'm doing this for the Empire. And he's like, all right, that's good enough. They consummate their marriage, and it's a beautiful thing. The next part is when Rand comes to town. He comes because they've had the meeting at Marilor, and they're saying that they will sign the Dragon's Peace only if the Shan-Chan is part of it. And people are just like, what? The Shan-Chan ain't part of it? I didn't even read the fine print on that. When he gets there, he finds Mat. I'm not sure if Mat led him to it. I think he did say that Mat led him to Tuon, basically by seeing Mat, which is a connection that they basically develop over time. Rand and Mat just go back and forth, just like, you know, trying to one-up each other. Like, I mean, I killed a golem, and Rand is like, you killed a golem. I cleansed the taint on the one power, and he's like, what difference does that make? Y'all all crazy anyway. It's great banter back and forth, and at the end, Tuon basically decides to sign the Dragon's Peace. When Rand is walking away, Mat goes, I say Moraine, how you feel about that? Boom! Mic drop. Rand can't do anything but laugh. So the only thing left is obviously Mat during the last battle. And I have a couple of things that basically really stood out to me, which I really loved. Obviously, a really big part is the last battle, but a couple of things that happened around that time really stands out to me. The first thing is when Mat first goes out onto the battlefield in Kandor. You know, he decides, you know, I need to get a feel of the battles, get to feel it, and trying to see if things make sense. He's kind of noticing a little bit from the tent, but he's just like, I got to get out there and feel it. That's the only way I'm going to really know what's going on. He gets out, goes out there with a couple of, you know, other soldiers, basically, and whoops ass, collects a Damani. He's basically like triple score, double score, triple score. And so he gets back and people just like, yo, he is the man. He gains the respect of soldiers. He collects a Damani. He sees what's going on, and he's just like, Gareth Bryn's a dark friend. Min is like, what? Tuon was afraid for him. She showed her feelings. Basically, was like, what do you think you're doing? Going out over there. I did not take you all the way over here for you to basically leave us in some silly stuff. So the next part is Mat, after he drops that bomb that Gareth Bryn is a dark friend, basically says, we need to change this whole battle or else we all gonna die. He decides to contact Egwene. Egwene on her end basically realizes that, you know, something's going on with Gareth Bryn, and she realizes after a while that, oh, one of the Forsaken were probably messing with him. And that makes sense. And then they find out that Elaine also had issues with Davram Bashir, and that Lan also was having issues with Agomar. And they were just like, That's perfect. That makes perfect sense that they would attack our, our great captains. And so they were like, the only person who we could think who has that type of expertise, who won't be affected by the shadow, is Matt. And they're just like, dare we? Yes. Matt basically makes a Zoom meeting through gateways with Elaine, Egwene, and the Hall of the Tower, and basically says, yeah, you're gonna have to drive, Matt. I hope you didn't drink. The dice starts rolling in his head. I love it. Whenever the dice starts to roll in his head, it's just like, oh, here we go. Buckle up, everyone. It's gonna be bumpy, but Matt's gonna end up victorious. And that's what I love about it. So as soon as that happened, basically I was like, we can win. We can win. So the last part, the last battle, Tarmangaiden, basically he makes a genius move to move all of the battles to one spot where he could basically direct it all at the same exact time. By then the Shadow Spawn is in a good enough spot where everyone could basically come and shoot the fair one basically and have a good fight. And it was just perfect. Matt's where he needs to be, directing the battle. Rand's where he needs to be, fighting the Dark One, about to try to seal him up. And Perrin is guarding his back in Tel'aran'rhiod. Just beautiful. So he basically has his battle plans. He decides to say, you know what, they got spies. I'm keeping it all in my head. I'm going to redo it, keep it all in my head. And they're just like, the light protect us. Yes, he got you. Don't worry about it. And during this time, while he's basically fighting the last battle and things are starting to seem like it's getting dire, and Demandred is out generaling him, he's having a conversation with Arganda, and he basically says my favorite Matt quote, which is, because I'll be a dark friend before I let this battle go without trying everything, Arganda. And I was just like, that's what I'm talking about, Matt. You ain't letting nothing go. Let it ride. All in. Here we go. I bet on me. That's why Matt is the man, and he will always be the man. I love other characters, but plain and simple, Matt is the man who gets it done. He gets the job done, and he has fun while he's doing it. And that's why Matt is basically the best. And so he ends up winning the last battle, and the Rand and him and Perrin, they win the last battle, and everyone lives happily ever after. Tuan got a baby on the way. He could go off to, Shan-Chan and help her consolidate her throne back again and bring peace to the world once again. And so begins the Fourth Age. It's a beautiful story. Matt is the best. So, guys, that was my video on Matrim Cauthon, the Prince of Ravens, the Gambler. I hope you loved it as much as I loved recording it. Please like the video if you liked it. I'm hoping that, you did, and that you'll come back for the next my next video that I post. And if you have any comments or questions, please comment below. I am very active talking to my listeners and viewers, so I really appreciate this, having conversations with everyone. So hopefully I catch you around the way. Till next time, call me, not Kobe.